The baseball glove. That summer, my brother Bernardo, or Nardo as we call him, flipped through more jobs than a thumb through a deck of cards. First he was a dishwasher, then a busboy, then a parking attendant, and finally a patty turner for some guy who never seemed to be in his hamburger stand for more than 10 minutes at a time. Mom believed he sold marijuana or did some other illegal shamelessness. Nardo lost one job for not showing up regular enough, another for showing up too regular. The boss hated his guts. The last job lost him when the owner of the hamburger stand packed up unexpectedly and left for Canada. The job Nardo misses most, though, was when he worked as a busboy for the Bonneville Lakes Golf and Catering Service. He says it was the only time he ever got to touch elbows with rich people. The parties they catered served free daiquiris, whiskey drinks, and cold beer. Really cold, in big barrels choking with ice. At some parties, like the one he got fired from, they passed out tickets for juicy prizes like motorcycles, TV sets, stereos, and snow skis. The last party had a six-piece band and a huge dance floor so the old fogies, as my brother called them, could get sloshed and make fools of themselves. As it turns out, he and a white guy named Randy took off their busboy jackets and began daring each other to get a ticket and ask a girl to dance. Randy bet Nardo wouldn't do it, and Nardo bet he would. And after a $2 pledge, he steered for the ticket lady. I could have hashed it around a bit, Manny, he said. I could have double and triple dared the guy a couple of times over, then come up with a good excuse, but that ain't my style. Instead, he tapped Randy's fingers smooth as fur and walked up to the ticket lady. She peered out from behind the large butcher paper covered table at the blotches of pasta sauce on his black uniform pants and white shirt, which were supposed to go clean with the catering service's light orange busboy jacket, but didn't, and said, "Ah, what the hell?" and tore him out a tag. Before the little voice nagging inside him could talk louder, Nardo asked the nearest girl for a dance. She had about 1,000,000 freckles and enough wire in her mouth to run a toy train over. They stumbled around the dance floor until the band mercifully ground to a halt. She looked down at his arm, kind of shy-like, and said, "You dance really nice." Now my brother had what you could call a sixth sense. Es muy vivo, as my grandmother used to say about a kid born that way. And with Nardo, it was pretty much a scary truth. He could duck trouble better than a champion boxer could duck a right cross. He made hairline escapes from baths, belt whippings, and scoldings just by not being around when punishment came through the door. So I believed him when he said something ticklish crawled over his shoulder, and when he turned around, there, across the dance floor, in front of the band leader about to make an announcement over the microphone, was his boss, Mr. Baxter, the boy, and boy was he steamed. Mr. Baxter owned the catering service, and sometimes my brother said the way he'd yell at the busboys, it was like he owned them too. Mr. Baxter didn't say anything, just pointed to the door, then at Nardo, and scratched a big X across his chest. Just like that, he was fired. The way Nardo tells it, you'd think he did that man a favor working for him. "Don't you ever get braces, Manny," he said, as if that were the lesson he'd learned. At first, Nardo didn't want to go to the fields, not because of pride, although he'd have used that excuse at the beginning if he couldn't have gotten away with it. It was more because, like anyone else, he didn't like sobbing out tears of sweat in 110-degree sun. That summer was a scorcher, maybe the worst in all of the years we lived in that valley desert, which our town would have been if the irrigation pump in front of the Sierra were turned off. I could tell how searing it was by the dragged out way my mom's roses drooped every morning after I watered them. The water didn't catch hold. The roses only sighed a moment before the sun sucked even that little breather away. Although it was hard for Nardo to duck my mom's accusing eyes, especially when Magda, my sister, came home slumped from the laundry after feeding bed sheets all day into a steam press, he was refusing to work any more. Whether one tried threats, scoldings, or even shaming, which my mom tried almost every other day, nothing worked. We gave it a shot, but none more vigorously than my dad. He'd yell and stomp around a little space of anger he'd cut in our living room, a branch of spit dangling from his lip. He declared to the walls what a good-for-nothing son he had. Even dare Nardo to at least be man enough to join the army. He vowed to sign the papers himself since Nardo wasn't old enough. The thing was, my dad wasn't working either. He just lost his job as a translator for the city because he'd drink beer during lunch and slur his words. Ever since losing his job, and even before, really, Dad had about as much patience as you could prop on a toothpick. He was always zeroing in on things he wanted to be disappointed in, and when he found one, he'd loose a curse quicker than an eye blink. Even when he was cursing, you could still feel one simmering there under his lip, ready to boil over. Even though he'd worked as a translator, my dad's English wasn't the greatest. Some syllables he just couldn't catch. Instead of saying watch, he'd say wash. And for stupid, he'd slip in a bit of Spanish. Y stupid. Es stupid. But when he said ass or ounce, stretching the S with a long lingering slowness, there was pure acid in the set of his teeth. If only Bernardo had just one ounce, my dad would say, making the tiniest measure between his thumb and forefinger, but with a voice the size of a whole block. For this part, Nardo stayed home, lifting weights and doing sit-ups and push-ups and nursing any piddling little pimple worth a few hours of panic. He was a nut about his handsome looks and must have tenderly combed his hair at least 20 times a day in the mirror. I wasn't like Nardo. I suppose years of not knowing what, besides work, was expected from a Mexican convinced me that I wouldn't pass from this earth without putting in a lot of days. I suppose Nardo figured the same and wasn't about to waste time, but I was of my grandpa Ignacio's line of useful blood. All his life, no matter what the job, my grandpa worked like a man trying to fill all his tomorrows with one solid day's work. Even in the end, when he got sick and couldn't move, he hated sitting on the couch doing nothing. He'd fumble around the house fixing sockets and floor trim, painting lower shelves, and screwing legs back onto tables. Although the the finished chore was always more of a sign of how much his mind had gotten older than anything else. For a while I hustled fruit with my cousins Rio and Pete. Their dad, my Uncle Joe, owned a panel truck, and together we sold melons, apples, oranges, whatever grew in season, from door to door. When my uncle hurt his leg tripping over some tree roots, and his ankle swelled up blue and tender as a ripened plum, and he couldn't walk, except maybe to hobble on one leg to the refrigerator or lean over to change channels on the TV, he took the panel truck away. Without work, I was empty as a Coke bottle. School was starting soon, and I needed money for clothes and paper stuff. I wanted a baseball mitt so bad a sweet hurt blossomed in my stomach whenever I thought about it. Baseball had been a grip of my fantasies then, and I couldn't shake it loose. There was an outfielder's glove in the window of Duran's department store that kept me dreaming downright dangerous outfield catches. I decided to stir up Nardo to see if he'd go pick chili peppers with me.